I need to know how to fix motion blur on an LG TV.
That also gets called the soap opera effect.
That doesn't tell me how to get rid of it.
The problem arises from the motion smoothing function that many high-def TVs have.
I think that's called motion estimation or motion interpolation.
It is called all of those things and even MEMC for motion estimation, motion compensation.
Why does it do that?
It is trying to make the video on your TV look as clear as a movie. But on a TV, the films are shot at 24 frames per second and video at 30 frames per second.
You'd expect the video then to look better.
The TV shows the 30 frames per second video on a 60 Hz or 60 images per second TV by doubling the frames. When you watch a 24 frames per second show, it doubles up on some frames, but if it doesn't do it right, you get weird effects.
I think that is called stutter.
Judder, but yes, you can get a stuttering in films, especially if they are doing slow motion on top of the conversion.
The problem with this theory is that my TV is 120 or 240 frames per second.
Yes, and you can up the refresh rate to help reduce motion blur.
I think it is already set high.
Frame interpolation is when the TV looks at the existing frames shot at 24 frames per second and guesses at what it is supposed to be at 240, but when it guesses wrong, the image looks wrong.
How can I tell if that's the problem?
You can turn off the smoothing function. It is the default for most TV modes.
So if I have the problem in TV mode but not some other mode, it is due to the smoothing function?
Yes, and you can solve it sometimes by switching to movie mode or cinema mode from LG's True Motion mode.
I don't get why this is the default setting for my TV.
If you turn it off, you can reduce the blur reduction too. However, with LG TVs, you get more options like being able to switch blur reduction methods like telling it to use frame repetition or black frame insertion.
I'd have to check the manual to see if changing to one of those other blur reduction options is an option.
You can try upping the sharpness too, while turning off the picture settings for anything that says dynamic.
Because dynamic equals interpolation, which is causing blurring.
You also need to turn off noise reduction, motion handling, picture enhancement, and see if the problem goes away. If it does, add one setting back at a time until you see which one is the cause.
Now I'm almost down to a dumb TV, instead of a smart one.
And don't use game mode, since that tends to make the problem worse.
I don't think any gamers in my house would even notice if there was blurring, given how long they stare at the screen.
If you're using a gaming console with the LG TV, I've heard the problem is less severe if you use the first HDMI port instead of the second.
That would be a new reason to swap out cables and ports, but also a new excuse for why someone didn't make that winning move in the game.